Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the couple!
Everyone in Teni Adebayo's family believed she had one problem. She was 34, successful, beautiful, owned a duplex in Lekki, drove a German SUV, managed one of Lagos's biggest marketing agencies. Yet, somehow, she wasn't married. To her mother, none of those achievements mattered. Every Sunday after church came the same conversation. Teni, Mommy, please. You know Sister Funke's son just returned from Canada? No. You haven't even seen his picture. I don't need to. He owns 3 filling stations. I said no. You don't even know if he's handsome. If he agreed to this meeting, he is desperate. Her mother sighed so deeply that even the ceiling fan seemed exhausted. You will not be young forever. Teni kissed her forehead and escaped before another prayer session began. Unfortunately, wedding season had arrived. And in Yoruba families, wedding season wasn't just celebration, it was interrogation. The first Owambe happened in Surulere, her cousin's traditional wedding. The event center glittered with gold decorations, live talking drums, photographers weaving between tables, and aunties dressed in matching ashoebi that looked expensive enough to pay a year's rent. The smell of jollof rice drifted through the hall. Children chasing each other around flower stands, old men arguing over politics. Everything looked perfect. Until Auntie Bossy spotted Teni. There she is! Teni froze. Too late. Within seconds, 5 aunties had surrounded her. My daughter, when are we wearing your own ashoebi? We have danced enough for everybody else. You are becoming too choosy. I know one senator. I know one pastor. I know twins. What does that have to do with me? They are both single. Laughter erupted. Teni forced a smile. Inside, she wanted the ground to swallow her. Across the hall, her mother pretended not to hear. But she noticed something. Whenever another mother proudly introduced her son or daughter-in-law, her mother's smile became smaller. Not angry, not disappointed, just lonely. That hurt more than the questions. Back in Lekki, Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. Work was her safe place. At Apex Vision Marketing, no one cared whether she wore an engagement ring. Clients cared about results, campaigns, deadlines, ideas. That was enough. Her assistant, Zara, walked into the office carrying coffee. You survived? Barely. How many husbands? Lost count. Doctors? 2. Pastors? 3. Engineers? 1 retired naval officer. Zara burst into laughter. You need protection. I need immigration. Or, Zara leaned closer. You need a boyfriend. I don't have time. You don't need a real one. Teni looked up. What? A fake one? Silence. Then both women laughed so hard people outside looked through the glass walls. It was obviously ridiculous. Or so they thought. That same afternoon, another invitation arrived. Then another. Then another. 5 weddings, 3 engagements, a naming ceremony, 1 funeral reception. Every invitation came with the same handwritten message from relatives. We hope you will come with good news. Good news, meaning a man. Teni dropped the stack onto her desk. She suddenly wasn't laughing anymore. 3 days later, she visited her mother again. The house smelled of fresh stew and fried plantain. For a brief moment, everything felt peaceful, until she noticed unfamiliar men's photographs spread across the dining table. Passport photographs, printed profiles, employment histories. Teni? What? What is this?
I am only helping Destiny. You created a spreadsheet. I used Excel. You used Excel? You taught me. Tini covered her face. Her mother smiled proudly. I even ranked them. Ranked by prayerfulness. Mommy and salary. Mommy and height. Oh Lord. I'm only trying to help. I don't need this. You think I enjoy begging people? That sentence landed differently. Begging? Tini had never thought about it that way. Her mother quietly gathered the papers. I only don't want people asking if something is wrong with my daughter. For the first time, Tini didn't have an answer. Driving home through 3rd Mainline Bridge that evening, she couldn't stop replaying those words. Something is wrong with my daughter. She hated that sentence. Not because she believed it, but because she knew people actually said it. Lagos had a way of measuring women with invisible rulers. Career, marriage, children. Everything became a scoreboard. She was tired. Not of being single, of defending it. That Friday, Zara walked into her office carrying an entertainment magazine. Teni, what? Listen before you laugh. Inside the magazine was an article about a struggling stage actor named Femi Lawson. Award-winning, talented, recently unemployed after a major production company shut down. Apparently, he'd been acting in commercials to survive. There. What am I looking at? He acts. So, he literally pretends to be other people. You've lost your mind. Have I? Tini laughed again. But this time, only for a second. That night, she couldn't sleep. She imagined another wedding, another interrogation, another forced smile, another disappointed look on her mother's face. Then, she remembered Zara's joke. A fake fiancé? Ridiculous, immature, completely impossible. Yet, the more she thought about it, the less impossible it sounded. The next morning, she did something she'd never admit to anyone. She searched for Femi Lawson online. There wasn't much. A few interviews, some theater clips, a commercial for a telecom company, several glowing reviews. Everyone agreed on one thing. He could make people believe anything. That should have scared her. Instead, it gave her an idea. 3 days later, she found herself sitting inside a quiet cafe in Victoria Island. She almost walked away twice. Then the cafe door opened. A tall man stepped inside wearing a neatly ironed shirt that clearly seen better days. Confident posture, calm smile, observant eyes. Not movie star handsome, but unforgettable. He spotted her immediately. Teni? She nodded. Femi? They shook hands. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, he smiled. So, which version of me would you like to hire? Teni blinked. You didn't ask why I called. I've spent 15 years reading people. You already know. I know nobody invites an unemployed actor to an expensive cafe during wedding season with an unusual request. She laughed by herself. Fair enough. He leaned back. I'm listening. She inhaled slowly. I need someone to pretend to be my fiancé. He didn't laugh. He didn't look shocked. Instead, he quietly stirred his coffee. Then he asked a question she never expected. For how many weddings? The question caught her off guard. You mean you're actually considering it? I didn't say yes. You didn't say no either. He smiled. Actors don't judge strange scripts.
There was something oddly measured about him, as though this conversation wasn't the strangest thing he'd ever heard. That should have been Teni's first warning, because while she believed she was hiring a man to fool her family, someone else had already begun writing a much more dangerous script. And before the wedding season was over, the fake engagement would uncover a secret buried for nearly 20 years.
The cafe suddenly felt quieter. Outside, traffic crawled through Victoria Island as impatient drivers leaned on their horns. Inside, neither Teni nor Femi reached for their coffee. Instead, they studied each other. Teni had expected disbelief, questions, maybe even laughter. But Femi looked almost prepared. He folded his hands neatly on the table. "If we're doing this," he said calmly, "we should discuss the rules before emotions get involved." That sentence caught Teni off guard. "Emotions?" she asked. "It's always emotions," he replied. "People think fake relationships are about acting. They're not. They're about convincing everyone else while trying not to convince yourselves." Teni laughed awkwardly. "You're assuming too much." "No," he smiled. "I'm assuming experience." She frowned. "Have you done this before?" He paused. A bit too long. "Not exactly." "Not exactly." It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. She noticed the careful wording. Still, she ignored it. "I only need someone for family events," she explained. "No public interviews. No social media drama. No pretending outside weddings unless absolutely necessary. And absolutely no real feelings." Femi chuckled. "I've heard that rule before." "You've heard what?" "Nothing." He waved it away. "Continue." Again, not exactly an answer. She pulled a typed document from her handbag. "I prepared a contract." His eyebrows lifted. "You actually wrote one?" "I'm a marketing executive." "I can see that." She slid it across the table. He read every line carefully. Payment, dates, dress code, confidentiality, emergency exit clause, behavior expectations. He nodded several times. "You forgot something." "What?" He reached for her pen and wrote another clause. "Either party may terminate the agreement immediately if continuing places another person at risk." Teni frowned. "At risk?" "It's a habit." "What kind of habit?" "The kind actors develop." She wasn't convinced. Still, she signed. So did he. Neither of them realized the contract would become meaningless before the wedding season ended. Over the next week, preparation began. They met after work to build their story. How they met, favorite foods, childhood memories, inside jokes, future plans. Everything had to sound effortless. One evening, they practiced while walking through Freedom Park. "So," Femi asked casually, "what's your favorite meal?" "It's amala." He smiled. "No?" "What do you mean no?" "You answered too quickly." "It is amala." "No, it is." "You hesitated before speaking." "I didn't." "You did." She rolled her eyes. "You really notice everything." "I notice survival." Again, an unusual choice of words. The rehearsals became strangely enjoyable. They argued over imaginary stories, invented vacations they never took, created fake memories that somehow sounded real. Soon, they could finish each other's sentences. It worried Teni, just a little. Meanwhile, back in her mother's house, preparations for another wedding had already begun. This one would be bigger. Her cousin Daya's wedding. Half the extended family would attend, including
every matchmaking auntie. Perfect. Saturday arrived. The event center in Ikeja shimmered beneath gold chandeliers. Live Fuji music echoed across the hall. Waiters balanced trays filled with small chops. Guests posed for photographers before they'd even greeted the couple. As expected, the aunties were already scanning the entrance. Then, a black SUV pulled in. Teni stepped out first. Elegant emerald green lace. Matching gilly. Simple jewelry. Confident smile. Heads turned immediately. But then, Femi stepped out. Navy agbada. Perfectly fitted. Warm smile. One hand naturally finding hers. No hesitation, no awkwardness. Just enough affection to look believable. The hall became silent. For 3 whole seconds. Then, whispers exploded. Who is he? Where did she find him? He's handsome. Finally! Her mother, who had been speaking to relatives near the entrance, slowly turned. The tray in her hand nearly slipped. Teni. She looked from her daughter to Femi, then back again. Her eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic tears, the quiet kind. The kind that arrive after years of waiting. Teni suddenly felt guilty. Very guilty. Mommy, this is... Before she could continue, Femi stepped forward. He bowed respectfully. Good afternoon, Ma. I've heard so much about you. Her mother blinked. You have? Teni speaks about you every day. That wasn't in their script. Teni stared at him. He continued naturally. She says no matter how stressful work becomes, your phone calls always remind her where home is. Her mother's lips trembled. Nobody spoke. Not even Teni. Because that part was true. She had said those words once, months ago. During rehearsal, she had mentioned it casually. He remembered. Within minutes, the family embraced him. Uncles laughed with him. Children followed him around. Even the famously difficult Auntie Bose approved. This one has good home training. Someone else added, and he speaks respectfully. Another aunt whispered, he doesn't look intimidated by successful women. The compliments kept coming. Too many. It almost felt easy. Too easy. Then something strange happened. Across the hall, an elderly woman froze while staring at Femi. She looked terrified. Not surprised, terrified. She gripped her walking stick tightly. Her daughter noticed. Mama? She whispered only 4 words. He came back. What? He finally came back. Before anyone could ask what she meant, she fainted. The music stopped. Guests rushed toward her. Chaos spread across the hall. Doctors in the family checked her pulse. Someone brought water. Someone shouted for space. Within minutes, she regained consciousness. But she refused to look at Femi again. Instead, she insisted on leaving immediately. It's nothing, relatives said. Just old age. Maybe low sugar. The wedding resumed. Everyone moved on. Except Femi. He watched the old woman's car leave. His smile disappeared just for a second. Then, it returned. Later that evening, as Teni and Femi drove back toward Lekki, she finally asked, Do you know that woman? He kept his eyes on the road. No. She looked terrified. I noticed. She said you came back. Silence. Then he shrugged. Old people sometimes mistake faces. Maybe, maybe not. Again, not exactly an answer. That night, Teni couldn't sleep. She replayed the wedding in her mind. The old woman's expression, Femi's calmness.
His strange contract clause, his careful answers, everything felt slightly off. Nothing she could prove, just enough to make her uneasy. The next morning, while scrolling through social media, she saw dozens of photos from the wedding. One picture caught her attention. It had been taken just before the elderly woman fainted. Everyone in the background was smiling. Everyone, except Femi. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was staring directly at the old woman. His expression wasn't confused. It was recognition. Teni zoomed in. Her heartbeat quickened. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Femi. Delete any photos where I'm looking at the old woman. She froze. She had never told him she'd seen the pictures. She hadn't mentioned the photo. She hadn't posted anything. How did he know? She looked at the image again, then back at his message. For the first time since hiring him, Teni stopped wondering whether she'd made a mistake. She started wondering, who exactly had she invited into her family's life? Teni stared at the message for nearly a minute. Delete any photos where I'm looking at the old woman. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed, deleted it, typed again, deleted it again. Finally, she settled on 4 simple words. Why would I do that? The reply came almost instantly. Because they're misleading. Nothing more. No explanation, no apology. Just that. Misleading. It was a curious choice of word. Not embarrassing, not private, misleading. Teni looked at the wedding photo again. The more she zoomed in, the less convinced she became. Femi's expression wasn't misleading. It was unmistakable. He knew that woman, or at the very least, she knew him. Monday morning at Apex Vision Marketing was chaos. An multinational client had moved a product launch forward by 3 weeks. Phones rang non-stop. Designers rushed between meeting rooms. Presentations were rewritten every hour. Normally, work drowned out every personal problem. Not today. Every few minutes, Teni caught herself replaying the wedding in her head. She hated distractions, especially mysteries. Her assistant, Zara, noticed immediately. You rearranged the same presentation 4 times. I know. You're thinking about him. I'm thinking about the old woman. So investigate. Teni looked up. What? You hired an actor. Yes. You didn't marry him? No. So investigate. I can't exactly ask him if he's secretly hiding another identity. Zara shrugged. You'd be surprised what people reveal when they think you're not asking. That evening, Teni searched for everything she could find about Femi Lawson. His acting profile, old interviews, award nominations, community theater productions, commercial appearances. Nothing unusual. Everything lined up. Too perfectly. Almost curated. She searched further back. Nothing. No university graduation photos, no childhood pictures, no birthday messages from longtime friends. It was as if his life began 9 years earlier. People didn't simply appear at 25 with no history, unless someone wanted that history hidden. The following Saturday brought another Owambe. This time, it was an elaborate engagement ceremony in Ikoyi. Luxury cars lined the street, live saxophone music floated through the entrance, crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors. The bride's family spared no expense. As Teni and Femi entered hand in hand, familiar whispers followed. They're still together. He must be serious. They even match. Teni's mother beamed with quiet pride. For once, nobody asked when Teni would settle down. Instead, people asked when the wedding would be. It was progress. Fake progress, but progress nonetheless. Halfway through the celebration, an older businessman approached them. He wore an immaculate white agbada, a gold wristwatch, and the kind of confidence money often brought. He smiled warmly at Teni. My dear, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Then he turned to Femi. His smile disappeared for a brief second. So, it's really you. Femi remained calm. I'm sorry. The businessman laughed softly. You are still pretending. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. No. The man took another step closer. I never forget a face. Teni watched both men carefully. Neither blinked, neither smiled. Finally, the businessman extended his hand. Perhaps I should call you by your other name. Silence. The air between them suddenly felt heavy. Femi accepted the handshake. I think you are mistaken. The businessman leaned closer and whispered something only Femi could hear. Whatever it was, it drained the color from Femi's face. Only for a moment. Then he smiled again. Professional. Controlled. Perfect. I hope you enjoy the wedding. The businessman walked away. What did he say? Teni asked immediately. Nothing important. What other name? I don't know what he meant. You looked shocked. I wasn't. You were. He sighed. You hired me to play your fiancé. Yes? Not to explain every strange person who mistakes me for someone else. That answer irritated her. You could at least tell me if we're in danger. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Then said quietly, if we were in danger, I wouldn't have brought you here. That answer should have reassured her. Instead, it raised another question. Why did he answer a question she hadn't asked? Later that evening, while guests sprayed the couple with Naira notes on the dance floor, Teni excused herself to freshen up. As she rounded a quiet hallway, voices drifted from a nearby lounge. One belonged to the businessman. The other, Femi. She stopped. Not intentionally, but once she heard her name, she couldn't walk away. You should leave Lagos, the businessman spoke first. I'm not running anymore. You think they don't know you are here. They've known for weeks. Teni frowned. Who are they? The businessman lowered his voice. You've involved an innocent woman. I know. You should end it. I can't. You said that before. This time is different. Because of the money? No. Then why? A long silence followed. Finally, Femi answered. Because she reminds me of someone. Teni's heartbeat quickened. Someone. Who? Before she could hear more, footsteps echoed down the corridor. She slipped away before anyone saw her. On the drive home, neither of them mentioned the conversation. Neither admitted they knew more than they had earlier that day. Both pretended everything was normal. It wasn't. The next Tuesday, something happened that changed everything. Teni received an anonymous envelope at work. No sender, no stamp. Just her name written neatly across the front. Inside, there was only one photograph. An old photograph. The edges were faded with age. It showed a group of university students standing outside a campus building. One face had been circled in red ink. Femi.
Except the caption underneath identified him as someone else. Adewale Ajayi. Teni frowned. She turned the photograph over. 3 handwritten words appeared on the back. Ask about Ibadan. Nothing else. No explanation. No signature. That evening, she placed the photograph in front of Femi. He looked at it for several seconds, then slowly looked up. For the first time since they met, he didn't hide behind a smile. He looked exhausted. Where did you get this? So his name is not Femi. He didn't answer. It says Adewale Ajayi. Silence. You told me your name was Femi Lawson. More silence.
Finally, he pushed the photograph back toward her. My name is Femi Lawson. And before that, his jaw tightened. I don't talk about my past. You don't get to decide that anymore. I do. No. She leaned forward. You walked into my family. My mother believes you are my future husband. People are asking questions, and now strangers are sending me photographs. She took a deep breath. So, I'll ask you one last time. Who are you? For the first time, Femi looked afraid. Not of her, not of the question, but of the answer. He stood up. I can't tell you. Why? Because if I do, you'll become part of something you can never walk away from. He left, leaving the photograph behind, leaving Teni alone, leaving far more questions than answers. Outside the restaurant, a black SUV had been parked across the street for nearly an hour. Its engine started the moment Femi stepped outside. It followed him, at a careful distance. Inside the SUV, a man lifted a phone to his ear. We've confirmed it. A pause. Yes, he's finally found her. The line went silent. Then came a chilling reply. Don't touch either of them. Not yet. Teni barely slept. The photograph lay on her bedside table. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same details. The faded university building, the red circle, the name beneath it, Adewale Ajayi. By 6 in the morning, she had made up her mind. She wasn't going to confront Femi again. Not yet. She wanted facts, and there was only one clue: Ibadan. She called in a personal day at work. Zara noticed the unusual request immediately. You've never taken leave because of a man. I'm not taking leave because of a man. Then why? Because of a lie. Zara tilted her head. That's somehow worse. 2 hours later, Teni was driving along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Rain clouds gathered overhead. The journey felt longer than usual. Her thoughts were louder than the traffic. Why Ibadan? Why had someone mailed the photograph anonymously? Why had Femi looked frightened instead of angry? And who was following him? She hadn't told anyone about the black SUV she'd noticed in her rearview mirror after leaving the restaurant the previous night. At first, she assumed it was coincidence. Now, she wasn't so sure. The address written on the back of the photograph led her to an old neighborhood near the University of Ibadan. It wasn't a house. It was a tiny bookstore. The sign above the entrance had faded with age. Most people would have driven past without noticing it. Inside, shelves leaned under the weight of dusty books and old newspapers. An elderly man looked up from behind the counter. Can I help you? Teni placed the photograph on the table. His expression changed instantly. He didn't touch it. Instead, he stared at her. Where did you get this? I'm looking for the man in the picture.
The old man sighed deeply. You've come 20 years too late. He introduced himself as Mr. Akin. For nearly 40 years, he had owned the bookstore. He knew almost everyone who attended the university, especially the student in the photograph. There were 4 of them, he said quietly. Brilliant boys. They believed they would change Nigeria. He pointed to each face one after the other. Kule, Bayo, Emeke. Then, his finger rested on the circled face, and Adewale. What happened? Mr. Akin remained silent. Finally, he whispered, they said he disappeared. They? The newspapers. And what really happened? His eyes filled with sadness. They buried the truth. Before Teni could ask another question, the bookstore door opened. A young delivery man entered carrying parcels. The old man immediately changed the subject. These dictionaries are for the secondary school. His tone had completely shifted, almost fearfully. The delivery man left after a minute. The old man waited until the door closed. Then he leaned closer. You shouldn't have come. Why? They still watch. They? The people who made sure nobody asked questions. Teni's stomach tightened. Who are they? I don't know. I only know this. He opened a drawer beneath the counter. Inside was another photograph. This one was clearer, newer. It showed the same 4 young men standing together, except there was someone else in the picture. A little girl, about 7 years old, smiling, holding Adewale's hand. Teni frowned. Who is she? I never knew. But Adewale protected her like an older brother. Teni stared harder. Something about the girl's face felt strangely familiar. Then, her phone rang. It was Femi. She ignored it. It rang again. Ignored. A 3rd time. Finally, she answered. Where are you? His voice sounded unusually tense. At work? No. Silence. Saying, I know you are lying. How? I asked because I already knew. Her heartbeat quickened. You've gone to Ibadan. She froze. How do you know that? Another silence. Then, leave. What? Get back in your car. Now. I'm trying to help you. No. His voice became sharper than she'd ever heard. I'm trying to protect you. The line went dead. Teni. Mr. Akin's voice interrupted her. He was looking through the window. His face had gone pale. They found you. She turned. Across the street, the same black SUV had stopped. 2 men remained inside, watching the bookstore. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. Mr. Akin quickly folded the photographs into a brown envelope. Take these. What about you? I've survived this long. You don't understand. No. He smiled sadly. You don't. He pointed toward the back door. Leave through there. What about? Go. She hesitated only a second before running. The back alley led to another street. She reached her car, locked the doors, and drove away. Only after several minutes did she dare look in the mirror. The SUV wasn't following. Or so she thought. Back in Lagos that evening, she finally opened the envelope. Inside were 3 photographs, a newspaper clipping, and a handwritten note. The article described a fire at a university hostel nearly 20 years earlier. 4 students had reportedly died. But something didn't make sense. She counted the names. 1, 2, 3. Only 3 victims were listed. The 4th student, Adewale Ajayi, was officially classified as missing, not dead. Missing. The handwritten note was even stranger. It contained only one sentence. The wrong man disappeared. Teni stared at those words for a long time. What did that even mean? The wrong man. She picked up the second photograph. This time, she noticed something she had missed earlier. One of the other students looked remarkably similar to Femi. Not identical, but close enough to be brothers or cousins. Suddenly, a possibility entered her mind. A possibility so outrageous she almost laughed. Had Femi stolen someone else's identity? Just then, someone knocked on her apartment door. 3 slow knocks. She wasn't expecting anyone. Carefully, she walked toward the peephole. Nobody. Only a small envelope lying on the floor. She opened the door. The hallway was empty. She picked up the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. No signature, no fingerprints. Only one message. Stop looking for Adewale. Then, beneath it, you are asking about the wrong man. The words echoed the handwritten note. The wrong man disappeared. The wrong man. The wrong man. Nothing made sense anymore. She reached for her phone. This time, she called Femi. He answered immediately. I was wondering when you'd call. No more lies. I know. I'm coming over. Don't. I'm already driving. A long pause followed. Finally, he sighed. Then, there's something you need to see. Before we uncover what Femi has been hiding all these years, take a second to breathe, because from this point on, the story changes completely. If you're enjoying this mystery and want more Nigerian stories with twists that keep you guessing until the very end, this is a great time to subscribe. It really helps the channel, and you won't miss what comes next. Now, let's continue. When Teni arrived at Femi's apartment, she expected a modest bachelor's flat. Instead, she found almost nothing. One sofa, one dining table, a mattress on the floor. No family photographs, no awards, no souvenirs, nothing personal. It looked less like a home and more like a place someone never intended to stay. Femi stood beside the window. He didn't invite her to sit. Instead, he walked to an old metal cabinet tucked into the corner. He unlocked it with a small key. Inside were dozens of neatly labeled envelopes. Every envelope bore a different name, different years, different cities. Abuja, Enugu, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, Ibadan, Lagos. Teni frowned. What is all this? Femi slowly removed one envelope, then another. Finally, he looked directly at her. My name is Femi Lawson. He paused. But it wasn't the first name I ever lived under. Teni felt her pulse race. He continued. And before you ask, no, I didn't steal anyone's identity. I was given one. The room fell silent. Everything Teni thought she knew about him shifted in an instant. And the truth was far stranger than either of them had imagined. The room was silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence. The kind that makes every tick of the clock sound louder than it should. Teni looked from the envelopes to Femi, then back again. How do you mean you were given an identity? Femi didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed one envelope on the dining table. Its edges were worn from being opened too many times. He slid it toward her. Open it. Inside was a birth certificate. Name: Femi Lawson. Date of issue: 20 years ago. Not 34 years ago. 20. Teni frowned. This can't be your original birth certificate. It isn't. He opened another envelope. This one contained school records. Primary school, secondary school, university admission letters. Every document carried the same name. Everything looked genuine. Everything was official. Everything had been created at exactly the same time. You forged these. He shook his head. No. They were issued legally. By who? I don't know. You expect me to believe someone simply handed you a new life? I didn't expect you to believe anything. He sat down. I only promised to stop lying. Outside, thunder rolled across Lagos. Rain began tapping softly against the windows. Inside, Femi finally began speaking. I wasn't born as Femi Lawson. My first name really was Adewale. Teni didn't interrupt. I grew up in Ibadan. My father taught engineering. My mother lectured at the university. I wanted to become an architect. His voice remained calm, almost detached. As a student, I lived in the same hostel you read about. The one that burned? Yes. Were you there? I survived. He looked toward the rain. There wasn't supposed to be a fire. What do you mean? It wasn't an accident. Teni leaned forward. For the first time, his story no longer sounded rehearsed. It sounded painful. There were 4 of us. You saw the photograph. Kule, Bayo, Emeka, and me. We weren't heroes. We weren't activists. We were just curious. About what? A government contract. Teni blinked. A government contract? We accidentally discovered financial records. They proved that millions of naira meant for university hostels had disappeared. And we were young. We thought exposing corruption would make someone thank us. He smiled bitterly. It made someone haunt us. The rain outside intensified. So the fire was meant to destroy the evidence. And we weren't supposed to survive. Teni remembered the newspaper clipping. Only 3 bodies. 1 missing student. You escaped. Barely. But why create another identity? Because the people responsible realized something. What? I still had copies. He reached into another envelope. Inside was an old flash drive. This? The only reason I'm still alive. Teni frowned. A flash drive? The originals were paper files. I copied everything. Years later, I digitized them. You've carried this for 20 years? I've never let it out of my sight. Everything suddenly fit. The fake identities, the surveillance, the strange contract clause, the black SUV. Someone wasn't chasing an actor. They were chasing evidence. But why become an actor? Femi laughed softly. It wasn't planned. I couldn't use my real qualifications. I couldn't risk background checks. Acting became the one profession where pretending to be someone else actually helped me survive. Teni sat quietly. The irony was heartbreaking. The man she'd hired to pretend had spent 20 decades pretending simply to stay alive. But something still doesn't make sense. What? The elderly woman at the wedding. Femi nodded slowly. I know. You did know her? Yes. Who was she? He hesitated. My former landlady, Eni Bado. She helped me escape the night of the fire. So why did she look terrified? Because she thought I died. The words lingered between them. Then Teni asked the question she had been avoiding. Why involve me? I didn't. You could have refused. I almost did. But you didn't. No. Why? For the first time, Femi struggled to answer. When you spoke about your mother, I remembered mine. Silence. I haven't seen her since that night. You don't know if she's alive? He shook his head. I wasn't allowed to contact anyone.
Teni's anger softened, just a little. Then she remembered something. The businessman. At the engagement. He knew you? Femi nodded. Yes. So why lie? Because he wasn't my enemy. What? He was trying to warn me. Another twist. So who is he? My university lecturer. He recognized me immediately. And the other name? He used my real name. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Until the apartment lights suddenly went out. Darkness. Complete darkness. The entire building lost power. A common Lagos occurrence. Except, Femi didn't treat it like one. He stood instantly. Stay away from the windows. What? Now. His voice was urgent. Not frightened. Trained. Almost instinctive. Seconds later, a faint red laser dot appeared on the living room wall. Then another. Then another. 3 dots. Moving slowly. Searching. Teni's blood ran cold. Femi, I know. He pulled her down behind the sofa. A split second later, glass exploded. The living room window shattered inward. Someone had fired from outside. The apartment filled with broken glass. Silence followed. No second shot. No shouting. Nothing. Femi reached into the cabinet. Not for a weapon. For a flashlight. He moved carefully. Checked the hallway. Then returned. They're gone. They tried to kill us. No. He corrected quietly. They tried to scare us. How do you know? If they wanted us dead, they wouldn't have missed. Teni realized something terrifying. He wasn't guessing. He knew. Police arrived 30 minutes later. Neighbors gathered outside. Everyone assumed it was an attempted robbery. Only Femi remained unconvinced. As police officers examined the apartment, one detective quietly approached Femi. Without introducing himself, he slipped a folded piece of paper into Femi's hand and walked away, as though nothing had happened. Later, after the police left, Teni unfolded the note. It contained only one sentence. They know she has the drive now. She looked at Femi. I don't have it.
His face went pale. He slowly looked toward the cabinet. The flash drive was gone. Neither of them had touched it since he placed it on the table. Someone had entered their apartment. Not to kill them, not to search, but to steal one small piece of evidence. And they had succeeded. Femi closed his eyes, then whispered something so quietly, Teni almost didn't hear it. We've been looking at the wrong conspiracy. What do you mean? He looked toward the shattered window. They're no longer trying to hide the past. They're trying to stop something that's about to happen. The apartment looked like a crime scene. Broken glass covered the floor. Rainwater seeped through the shattered window. Police officers had gone. Neighbors had stopped whispering. But one question remained. Who had taken the flash drive? Teni sat quietly on the edge of the sofa. For the first time since this strange arrangement began, none of this felt like a fake engagement anymore. It felt dangerously real. Femi swept the broken glass into a pile without saying a word. His movements were calm. Too calm.
You've done this before, Teni said. He didn't look up. What? Cleaning up after people tried to scare you. He stopped sweeping, then nodded. More times than I can count. She watched him carefully. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Because I thought I could keep you outside it. You failed. I know. And now? He finally met her eyes. Now you're already inside. The next morning, neither of them went to work. Instead, they met Zara at a quiet cafe in Yaba. After hearing everything, Zara remained unusually quiet. Finally, she said something neither of them expected. I think you're asking the wrong question. Femi frowned. What do you mean? You're asking who stole the flash drive. Isn't that obvious? No. She leaned forward. The real question is, who knew the flash drive was there? Silence. Only 3 people had seen it. Femi, Teni, and no. There had been someone else, the detective. But he only arrived after the break-in, Teni said. Exactly, Zara replied. So how did he know what had been stolen? The room fell silent. Before anyone could respond, Femi's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. No one spoke. Instead, a voice recording began to play. It was old, scratchy, almost distorted. Then, Tei froze. It was her mother's voice. Please, don't involve my family. The recording ended abruptly. The call disconnected. Tei stared at Femi. My mother's voice? Yes. How? I've never heard it before. Neither had he. Within minutes, Tei was driving to her mother's house. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The recording echoed in her mind. Don't involve my family. When did she say that? To whom? And why? Her mother welcomed her with the same warm smile as always. But today, Teni wasn't there for lunch. She placed her phone on the dining table. Pressed play. The recording filled the room. The smile disappeared. For several seconds, her mother didn't move. Then she quietly sat down. You found it. Teni felt her heart sink. You know this recording. Her mother nodded. I've prayed this day would never come. What does that mean? Her mother closed her eyes. I owe you the truth. 21 years ago, before Teni's father died,
He was a journalist, not a famous one, but an honest one. He had been investigating corruption involving university construction contracts across southwestern Nigeria. One of his biggest sources was a university student named Adewale Ajayi. Femi stared in disbelief. "You knew my father?" Teni asked. Her mother looked at him carefully. "No, I knew yours." The room went silent. "My husband met Adewale several times. He believed the young men had uncovered something enormous. They planned to publish everything together. But," she struggled to continue, "the hostel burned before the story could be released." Femi whispered, "My parents. I searched for them." "I know." Her voice trembled. "Your mother came to our house." The sentence landed like thunder. "What?" "The morning after the fire, she stood and walked to an old wooden cabinet. From the bottom drawer, she removed a small tin box. Inside were yellowed newspaper cuttings, old letters, and one sealed envelope. She handed it to Femi. "It was left for you." His hand shook as he opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was neat, careful. The signature at the bottom read, "Mom." Femi struggled to read aloud. "My son, if you ever receive this letter, it means I failed to find you." Tears filled his eyes. "I have never stopped looking. They told me you were dead. I refused to believe them. If you survived, live. Don't come back. They're still watching. I love you. Always. Mom." No one spoke. Even Zara quietly wiped away tears. After a long silence, Teni finally asked, "Why didn't you ever tell me any of this?" Her mother looked devastated. "Because your father died 2 weeks later." "What?" "He was killed in a road accident." Femi slowly shook his head. "No." She looked at him. "It wasn't an accident." The room fell silent again. "My father investigated the same people," Femi said. "So did yours. They removed anyone who got close." Teni suddenly remembered something. The anonymous envelopes, the photographs, the messages. They weren't threatening me, they were leading me. Femi nodded slowly. "Someone wanted you to uncover the truth. But who?" Just then, the doorbell rang. 3 slow chimes. Everyone froze. Her mother whispered, "Don't answer." The bell rang again, then a third time. Finally, Femi looked through the peephole. An elderly man stood outside, alone, holding a walking stick. It was Mr. Aki, the bookseller from Ibadan. Femi opened the door. "I thought you said they were watching." Mr. Aki smiled faintly. "They are." He stepped inside, "But so am I." He removed a folded newspaper from under his arm. The front page carried a headline about a powerful businessman announcing his intention to contest for governor. Teni frowned. "What does this have to do with anything?" Mr. Akin pointed at the photograph. The politician smiling on the front page was one of the 4 young men from the university photograph. The one everyone believed had died in the hostel fire. Kunle, alive, older, using a different surname, and now preparing to run for governor. The room fell completely silent. Femi stared at the newspaper, his face drained of color. "No." Mr. Akin nodded. "Yes. The dead man never died." Everything they believed about the fire changed in an instant. There hadn't been 3 victims and 1 survivor. There had been a man who disappeared,
a man who hid, and a man who reinvented himself into one of the most powerful figures in the state. Mr. Akin looked directly at Femi. The conspiracy was never about destroying evidence. It was about protecting someone's future. Then he looked at Teni. And whether either of you survives depends on what you do before the next Owambe. For 2 days, nobody slept much. The newspaper lay open on Teni's dining table. Every time she looked at the smiling politician on the front page, she saw something different. Not a governor hopeful, not a respected businessman, but a man who was supposed to have died 20 years ago. Or at least, that was what the evidence seemed to suggest. Still, something bothered her. Pieces fit together, but not perfectly. And Teni had built her career on one simple rule.
Mr. Akin noticed her hesitation. "You're thinking. I'm doubting." "Good," he smiled. "Never stop doubting." Femi looked up. "What aren't we seeing?" Teni spread every document across the dining table. The newspaper clipping, the university photograph, the anonymous notes, the letter from Femi's mother, the fake identity documents. She rearranged them again, then again. Finally, she noticed something everyone else had missed: the dates. Every anonymous envelope had arrived 1 day before an Owambe. Never after, always before. "They're not random," she whispered. "They're invitations." "Invitations to what?" Sarah asked. "To be present." Mr. Akin slowly nodded. "I wondered when you'd notice." "You knew?" "I suspected." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to know whether you'd trust your instincts." Femi frowned. "The weddings, they're connected." Not because the couples were involved, not because the venues mattered, but because every major family in the old university network attended the same social circle. The weddings weren't celebrations. They were the only places where old allies, old enemies, and old secrets gathered under one roof. Someone had been using Owambe season as a meeting ground for decades, hidden in plain sight. The final wedding invitation sat unopened on the table. It belonged to the daughter of one of Lagos's wealthiest families. Almost everyone important would attend. Politicians, business leaders, traditional rulers, old university classmates, including the man preparing to run for governor. "This is where it ends," Femi said. "No," Teni replied. "This is where it begins." The morning of the wedding arrived with brilliant sunshine. By noon, the event center in Echo Atlantic glittered with luxury. Crystal chandeliers, fresh orchids flown in from South Africa, talking drummers welcomed guests. A live orchestra alternated with Fuji musicians. Every guest looked as though they had stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. No one suspected that beneath the music and laughter, lives were about to change. Teni arrived wearing deep burgundy asoke. Elegant, confident. Beside her, Femi wore ivory agbada embroidered in gold. To everyone else, they were still the happy, engaged couple. But today, they had another purpose. Her mother squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For finally choosing someone who sees you." Teni forced a smile. If only it were that simple. Across the hall, the governor hopeful entered. Security surrounded him. Guests rushed forward to greet him. Cameras flashed. He smiled effortlessly, the perfect public figure. Then, his eyes met Femi's. The smile disappeared, only for a heartbeat, but Teni saw it. Recognition. Not surprise, recognition. The politician approached them. "So, we meet again." Femi remained calm. "I believe we've never officially met." The politician chuckled. "You've always been good at pretending." Teni expected an argument. Instead, the politician extended his hand and spoke. "Congratulations on your engagement." Femi shook it. Their eyes never left each other. Then, something unexpected happened. The politician leaned closer and spoke soft enough that only Femi and Teni could hear. "I hoped you'd stay away." Femi answered just as quietly, "I tried. You should have tried harder." He walked away before either of them could respond. Minutes later, the bride and groom entered. Everyone stood. Music filled the hall. The MC welcomed the guests. Everything looked perfectly normal until the giant LED screen behind the stage flickered once, twice, then went black. The music stopped, guests murmured, technicians rushed toward the control booth. Suddenly, the screen came alive again. But instead of wedding photos, an old university photograph appeared, the same one Teni had received anonymously. The hall fell silent. Another image replaced it: the hostel, smoke, fire, newspaper headlines, financial records, construction contracts, faces, dates, millions of naira diverted from public funds. One slide after another. Someone had hacked the presentation. Panic spread through the hall. The politicians stood frozen. Security officers searched frantically for whoever controlled the screen. Then, a final image appeared: the four university friends. This time, a red question appeared beneath it: who really survived? Guests began whispering. Journalists reached for their phones. Television crews started recording. The wedding had become a national scandal. The politician suddenly turned toward Femi. "You did this." Femi shook his head. "No, I don't have the flash drive anymore." The politician's expression changed. "What?" That single reaction told Teni everything. He knew about the flash drive, which meant he had been connected all along. Before anyone could speak again, a familiar voice echoed through the speakers. It wasn't Femi, it wasn't Mr. Akin, it wasn't Teni. It was the businessman from the earlier engagement ceremony, Femi's former lecturer. His face appeared live on the giant screen. "My name is Professor Samuel Adeyemi. For 20 years, I remained silent. Today, I won't." He began revealing names, contracts, dates, companies, officials, not rumors, evidence, verified documents, everything the four students had uncovered decades earlier, everything Femi had risked his life to protect. The hall erupted. Some guests hurried toward the exits. Others remained rooted to the spot. Several influential men quietly slipped away before cameras found them. Then, the professor said something nobody expected. "I owe one man an apology." The screen changed. Femi's photograph appeared. "I spent 20 years believing Adewale abandoned his friends. I was wrong. He spent 20 years protecting the evidence while the rest of us protected ourselves." Femi lowered his head. For the first time, the weight he had carried for 2 decades seemed to lift. Then a single clap echoed through the hall. Everyone turned. It was Teni's mother. She was standing, clapping slowly, deliberately. One by one, other guests joined, not because the scandal entertained them, but because the truth had finally survived. Security officers moved toward the politician. He didn't resist. He simply smiled, a strange, peaceful smile. As they led him away, he looked directly at Femi. "You still don't know the whole story." Then he was gone. Teni felt a chill. After everything, he still believed there was another truth. She turned to Femi. "Do you think he's lying?" Femi looked toward the now dark screen. I don't know." For the first time since this strange journey began, there were no more masks, no more fake smiles, no more rehearsed lines. Only 2 people who walked into a fake engagement and emerged with their lives forever changed. For 3 days, Lagos talked about nothing else. Not fuel prices, not football, not politics. Only the wedding. Clips from the reception flooded social media. Some people called it the most dramatic Owambe in recent memory. Others argued that it should never have happened at a family celebration. Everyone had an opinion. Very few people knew the whole truth.
Investigations reopened files that gathered dust for 2 decades. Journalists began connecting names that had never appeared together before. Former university staff came forward. Retired civil servants gave statements. The construction contracts that once seemed forgotten were examined again. Several officials faced questioning. Some powerful people resigned before they were asked to. Others disappeared from public view altogether. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't perfect justice, but for the first time in 20 years, the truth had somewhere to breathe. Teni returned to work on Monday. Her colleagues greeted her with curious smiles. No one asked directly about the wedding. They didn't need to. The internet had already told half the story. The other half, only she and a handful of people understood. Zara walked into her office carrying 2 cups of coffee. So? Are you still engaged? Teni laughed. I honestly don't know. You hired an actor. I know. You uncovered a national scandal. I know. You almost got shot. I definitely know. Zara smiled. I asked whether you are still engaged. Teni looked out through the office window. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have an answer. Meanwhile, Femi packed the last box in his apartment. The envelopes were gone. The cabinet was empty. The walls looked even barer than before. 20 years of running had taught him never to unpack completely. This time, he intended to. He just didn't know where. A knock came at the door. It was Mr. Akin. The old bookseller smiled warmly. I thought you might leave without saying goodbye. I almost did. You don't have to run anymore. Femi looked unconvinced. I've forgotten how to stop. Mr. Akin nodded. That happens to people who survive for too long. He handed Femi a small envelope. This arrived yesterday. No sender? No. Inside was another handwritten letter. This one was from the professor. It contained only a few lines. You carried the burden because the rest of us lacked courage. Don't spend the rest of your life carrying it alone. Femi folded the letter carefully. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe the chase might truly be over. That weekend, there was one final family gathering. Not a wedding, not an engagement, just Sunday lunch at Teni's mother's house. The atmosphere felt strangely peaceful. No one mentioned husbands, no one introduced illegible bachelors, no aunties appeared with photographs. Instead,
They simply ate, laughed, shared stories. It felt unfamiliar, in the best possible way. After lunch, Teni's mother called her into the garden. I owe you an apology. For what? I spent years praying for a husband when I should have been praying for your peace. Teni felt tears sting her eyes. I thought I was helping. I know. I forgot that happiness doesn't always arrive on my timetable. She reached for her daughter's hand. I'm sorry. Teni hugged her tightly. For the first time in years, neither of them felt misunderstood. As they returned inside, Teni noticed Femi standing beneath the mango tree. He looked lighter somehow, less guarded. She walked over. So, our contract. He smiled. It expires today. She reached into her handbag and produced the folded agreement they had both signed weeks earlier. The paper looked almost ridiculous now. She read one clause aloud. Either party may terminate the agreement immediately if continuing places another person at risk. She looked up. I think we're finally safe. I think so too. She tore the contract neatly in half. Then again. Tiny pieces drifted into the garden like confetti. The fake engagement was officially over. Neither of them spoke. Birds chirped somewhere above. Children laughed inside the house. The city carried on as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Finally, Femi broke the silence. I should probably say goodbye. You probably should. Neither moved. Then Teni laughed softly. You're still acting. He blinked. What?
You've spent weeks pretending not to care. He smiled. Did you notice? I work in marketing. I notice stories. And yours stopped feeling fake a long time ago. He looked down. I didn't want you to think gratitude was love. And I didn't want you to think kindness was obligation. Another quiet pause. Then, almost at the same time, they both laughed. Not because everything was perfect, but because they had finally stopped performing. Months later, life looked different. Teni had launched her own communications consultancy, specializing in crisis and reputation management. Ironically, the experience she never wanted had taught her exactly how fragile public stories could be. Femi returned to acting, not because he needed another identity, but because for the first time in decades, he could perform under his own name. He accepted roles in theater again. Eventually, he even told his true story in a documentary, not to become famous, but to honor those who never had the chance to speak. One evening, after a successful stage performance, Teni met him outside the theater. She handed him a small gift. Inside the box was a simple keychain. On one side was engraved, "No more pretending." On the other, "See you at the next Owambe." He smiled. Does that mean? It means, she interrupted with a grin, if we attend another family wedding together, you'll have to come as yourself. He slipped the keychain into his pocket. I think I can manage that. Together, they walked toward the waiting crowd, not as people trapped by expectations, but as two individuals who had chosen honesty over performance. Their future remained unwritten, and somehow, that felt better than any perfectly scripted ending. Sometimes, the roles we play to satisfy other people become so convincing that we forget who we really are. Sometimes, families love us so deeply that they mistake pressure for care. And sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one you are searching for, but the one who accidentally helps you find yourself. If this story stayed with you, remember that every smile at an Owambe, every introduction, and every family expectation hides a story that outsiders may never see. And perhaps the greatest courage isn't pretending to be perfect. It's having the freedom to stop pretending at all. If you enjoyed the Owambe Decoy and you'd like more layered Nigerian stories filled with mystery, family drama, unexpected twists, and heartfelt endings, subscribe to the channel and join us for the next journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and never assume you know the whole story behind someone else's smile.